March 25, 1982. The Throgs Neck Bridge, New York City. Police divers are searching the East River. A wallet turned up in the shallows at Fort Schuyler, a $100 bill inside it, and an ID that made the detectives go quiet. It belonged to Theodore Maritas, president of the New York City District Council of Carpenters, a man who represented 30,000 workers. He had a home in Dix Hills, a wife named Angela, and a federal retrial scheduled for that Friday. He'd told his wife he had an appointment in Manhattan. He left the house and was never seen again. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The divers found nothing. His body was never recovered. No one was ever charged with his murder. Maritas didn't disappear over a drug deal or a gambling debt. He disappeared because he was 3 days away from testifying in a federal racketeering trial about something that doesn't sound like mob business at all. He was going to testify about drywall. When people think about the mob and New York construction, they picture the concrete club. 5 families splitting contracts on every cement pour over $2 million. Fat Tony Salerno and Paul Castellano carving up the foundations of Manhattan while the FBI plants bugs in parked Jaguars. That story has been told. But concrete was the exterior. Drywall was the interior. And the Genovese family didn't share the interior with anyone. While the commission was grabbing headlines with multi-family cement schemes, a single Genovese captain from East Harlem had quietly built something more durable. A cartel. A private tax on every interior wall, every finished ceiling, every building going up anywhere in New York City. By the time federal prosecutors fully understood what he had built, a union president was at the bottom of the East River. $32 million in government contracts were flowing into mob-owned companies in a single year, and the FBI had spent 4 years trying to map a racket that had been hiding in plain sight for 2 decades. The man who built it was Vincent DiNapoli, and this is the story that never made a movie. Vincent DiNapoli was born in East Harlem in 1937. His older brother Joseph became a Lucchese family member, eventually serving as consigliere. His younger brother Louis followed him into the same orbit. DiNapoli himself started out as a Lucchese associate before being drawn toward the Genovese family through Vincent "Fish" Caffaro, a soldier in Fat Tony Salerno's crew. Here is what made DiNapoli different from the typical mob biography. He wasn't primarily a street enforcer. He was a businessman. He understood institutional leverage in a way most organized crime figures never developed. Not how to take money through force, but how to position yourself inside a system so that money flows toward you automatically, legally, invisibly. The FBI would later describe him as New York's most powerful labor racketeer. That wasn't an accident. It was a career strategy. In 1978, he identified his target. Not drug trafficking, not loan sharking, drywall. Understand what that means. Gypsum board, sheetrock, is the interior skin of every building. Every office, every apartment, every hospital, every school. In a city of Manhattan's density, where towers go up constantly and every interior is finished the same way, controlling drywall means taxing the final stage of construction on everything. It doesn't make headlines, but it's everywhere. DiNapoli saw that. That year, he formed 2 companies, Inner City Drywall and Cambridge Drywall, both registered legitimately, both employing real workers. On paper, ordinary construction subcontractors. In practice, the engine of a cartel that would control drywall pricing across New York City for the next 2 decades. A cartel doesn't run on violence alone. Violence is the backstop. What it actually runs on is control of information and access. And in the construction industry, both of those flow through the unions. DiNapoli focused on 2 unions. The New York City District Council of Carpenters, 30,000 members, jurisdiction over drywall installation, and a plasterer's local he personally established in 1978 and installed a trusted associate to run. His grip on the Carpenters District Council worked through Teddy Maritas. DiNapoli owned him. Maritas accepted regular payoffs from contractors who wanted preferential treatment. Union labor dispatched without friction, contracts awarded outside competitive bidding, rivals frozen out through manufactured delays. According to Caffaro's later sworn testimony, those payments moved up through DiNapoli to Salerno and the Genovese hierarchy above him. In practice, it worked like this. A contractor wants to win a $3 million drywall subcontract on a midtown tower. Under a real market, 3 firms bid, the lowest wins. Under DiNapoli's system, the contractor pays a percentage to someone in his network. In return, the labor side of the equation cooperates. Rival contractors face sudden union objections. Inspections slow. Workers don't show. The contractor who paid wins. That cost gets passed to the developer. The developer passes it to the tenant or buyer. The taxpayer absorbs it on public projects. Every time. By 1980, DiNapoli's 2 companies had secured more than $16 million in contracts from SEBCO alone, the Southeast Bronx community organization run by Father Louis Gigante, who happened to be the brother of Genovese boss Vincent "The Chin" Gigante. A federally funded nonprofit rebuilding the devastated South Bronx was channeling construction contracts to companies secretly owned by a Genovese captain through an organization run by the boss's own brother. The federal government was, in effect, subsidizing the mob's drywall operation. By that same year, DiNapoli had accumulated more than $60 million in total municipal contracts. That figure landed him on Forbes magazine's list of the 10 wealthiest organized crime figures in the country. Not the 10 most violent, the 10 richest. Through Drywall. In March 1981, the federal indictment arrived. DiNapoli, his brother Louis, and Maritas were charged under RICO with labor racketeering and extortion. The first trial ended in a hung jury in December 1981. A retrial was set. That's when Maritas became a liability. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. According to Cafaro's sworn declaration to the FBI, DiNapoli came to him and said he was worried Maritas might cooperate before the second trial. Maritas knew everything: years of payments, names, amounts, arrangements. If he flipped, DiNapoli didn't just lose a co-defendant. He lost the firewall between himself and the end of everything he'd built. Cafaro told DiNapoli to speak with Sammy Santora, the 116th Street boss with authority to approve such decisions. DiNapoli went. Shortly after that conversation, Maritas left his Long Island home on a Tuesday morning and never came back. The government had actually warned him. A federal prosecutor told the court that Maritas had been advised by FBI officials that he had been marked for death. Maritas said he would take his chances. His wallet turned up in the East River. The divers searched for 3 hours. No body, no charges, no conviction. Case closed, unsolved. With the key co-defendant gone, the legal pressure on DiNapoli eased. He pleaded guilty to lesser charges later in 1982 and received 5 years. He went to prison in 1983. Going to prison didn't stop the racket. His brother Louis and associate Louis Moscatiello took over the union operations while he was inside. When DiNapoli returned, he resumed control and cultivated the next district council president. The mob tax on drywall construction continued exactly as before. The racket outlived one federal conviction, one 5-year sentence, and the death of the one man who might have ended it early. It was that durable. Danny Evangelista was a union leader in Local 385, a dissident who tried to give rank-and-file carpenters actual representation instead of serving mob interests. According to federal investigators and later testimony, DiNapoli ordered his killing. Evangelista was shot to death sitting at his desk inside the union local. The case was never solved. Sean Toner was another Local 385 member who publicly criticized the corrupt union leadership. He didn't die, but according to investigators, DiNapoli ordered his home firebombed. Toner survived. The message was received. This is what gets lost in the accounting of dollar amounts and contract percentages. The 30,000 carpenters whose union was being sold underneath them. Their dues went to officials who answered to a Genovese captain. Their job assignments were controlled by men who sold access to the highest bidder. Their wages and benefits were negotiated not on their behalf, but on behalf of contractors who paid DiNapoli for the privilege of lower labor costs. The workers who built the Skyline were, by any honest measure, victims of this system too. The mafia told a story that it was protecting labor. In DiNapoli's operation, labor was the product being sold. In September 1986, Vincent Cafaro, the man who had sponsored DiNapoli into the Genovese family, was arrested on racketeering charges. He was in his 50s, facing decades in prison. He made a calculation. From October 1986 to March 1987, while out on bail, Cafaro attended Genovese family meetings wearing a recording device for the FBI. When his cooperation was revealed in court, he had given the government everything: the family's organizational structure, the union rackets, the payment chains, and confirmation that DiNapoli had sought and received approval to murder Teddy Maritas. In 1988, DiNapoli was convicted and sentenced again. An appeals court reversed those convictions in 1991, ordering a new trial. The legal battle continued for years, but the architecture of the racket had been exposed. It didn't stop. After DiNapoli's interests were absorbed by Genovese Captain Liborio Bellomo, the system continued operating through new names. The 2004 federal indictment, 22 defendants, 83 counts, 225 pages, was the culmination of a 4-year investigation into the same scheme DiNapoli had built decades earlier. 2 construction unions, controlled for decades. Contractors extorted. Welfare funds defrauded. Municipal contracts manipulated, including contracts on New York City public schools. Same structure, different operators. Vincent DiNapoli died in November 2005 at age 68. He outlived 2 serious federal prosecutions, the appeals that overturned his 1988 convictions, and most of the men he'd worked alongside. He was never convicted of murdering Teddy Maritas. He was never charged with ordering the killing of Danny Evangelista. He died with $32 million in single-year city contracts behind his name, on the Forbes list of the country's wealthiest mob figures, and in near-total public obscurity. His brother Vincent, the Chin Gigante, died that same month in a federal prison in Missouri, still serving his 1997 racketeering sentence. He had admitted in 2003 that the decades-long mental illness performance had been a deliberate fraud to avoid prosecution. The actual boss of the family, shuffling around Greenwich Village in pajamas while his captain taxed the city's interiors, died in a prison cell. Teddy Maritas has been missing for more than 40 years. His wallet came out of the East River. His body never did. The man federal prosecutors believed ordered his death, served 5 years on lesser charges, and died of natural causes. In the mafia, that's not failure. That's the system working exactly as designed. The Genovese drywall racket wasn't spectacular. There was no single heist, no famous score, no Lufthansa moment. What there was, for 2 decades, was a toll booth on the construction of an entire city. Every office tower going up in Midtown. Every housing development in the outer boroughs. Every school and hospital whose interior walls were finished and whose ceilings were hung. If the work was in New York and the drywall was union, there is a reasonable probability that somewhere in the chain of contracts and subcontracts and labor dispatches, money moved toward DiNapoli's network. The mob didn't build New York's Skyline, but for a long stretch of the 20th century, they taxed it. And when you can make the extortion indistinguishable from the normal cost of doing business, when the walls still go up, the workers still get paid, and the city still functions, that's not just organized crime. That's infrastructure. If this story got under your skin, hit subscribe. We put out a new mob documentary every week. The real mechanics behind organized crime, the figures history forgot, and the stories no movie has ever told. Drop a comment and tell us what you want next. The Genovese family's grip on the New York windows industry. Same era, same families, different racket. The story of how the Chin convinced federal judges he was insane for 15 years. Or the Javits Convention Center, and exactly how the mob taxed its construction. We're just getting started. This is Mafia Talks. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.